There comes a moment in every relationship, long after the arguments fade, long after the pride settles, when the reality of what was lost finally arrives. Not with fireworks, not with catastrophe, but with a quiet truth she can no longer outrun. It happens when she sees him laughing again, living again, or simply no longer reaching for her the way he once did. And suddenly, the story she told herself about having more time, more chances, more control, begins to unravel. The quiet ache of realization often arrives unexpectedly, slipping into her awareness like a slow-forming shadow. At first, she may try to dismiss it, brushing it off as nostalgia or temporary loneliness. But the truth grows louder each day. She begins to feel the emotional echo of losing a man who once offered her a sense of grounding, presence, and emotional safety. It isn't always dramatic. It can be as simple as hearing a familiar song, or as subtle as noticing that no one else listens to her with the same sincerity he did. She starts to recognize the moments when he was patient with her, the times he offered understanding instead of judgment, the way he stayed even when she pushed him away. And in that recognition, a quiet ache begins to form, one she tries to ignore because acknowledging it would mean facing the part she played in his disappearance from her life. As days pass, she notices what his absence has created. The emotional space he used to fill now feels strangely hollow. She may find herself revisiting old conversations, remembering details she once overlooked, seeing meanings she didn't understand before. Where she once felt secure enough to take him for granted, she now sees the value of what she lost with a clarity that stings. She starts to realize that the comfort he gave wasn't ordinary, that the consistency he offered wasn't something every man provides. There was a reliability in him, a steadiness, a softness that she only begins to truly appreciate once it is no longer hers. She may try to convince herself that she is fine without him, that she made the right choices, that life goes on. But beneath that rationalization lives a tender truth. She misses the emotional refuge he unknowingly built for her. The ache deepens when she notices how differently others treat her, how rare his type of love actually was. She may see him moving forward, becoming lighter, stronger, or more self-assured, and something inside her tightens. She recognizes that the man who once gave her so much of himself is now offering that presence to a world that no longer includes her. And this realization doesn't come with anger or bitterness, it comes with a quiet sorrow. It is the understanding that she did not lose him in a single moment but through a series of overlooked gestures, unspoken needs, and misunderstood intentions. This is the ache she carries, silent, private, and deeply human, because it reminds her not only of him, but of the part of herself she was with him, a part she now struggles to reclaim without his warmth guiding her back. The hidden remorse masked by pride often becomes one of the most complex emotional battles she faces after losing a good man. She feels the heaviness of regret, yet she refuses to let it show. Instead of admitting she misses him or acknowledging the mistakes that pushed him away, she constructs a version of herself that appears composed, unaffected, even thriving. This isn't because she doesn't care, it's because vulnerability feels dangerous. To admit she lost something valuable would mean confronting the ways she overlooked him, misunderstood his intentions, or dismissed the depth of his loyalty. Pride becomes her shield, a way to protect herself from the discomfort of admitting she misread a heart that was genuine. She may begin acting more confident than she feels, posting pictures that suggest she's moved on, laughing loudly in social settings, or telling friends she is better without him. But beneath that confident exterior lies an unspoken remorse that she carries quietly. She replays her words, her actions, the moments she pushed him away when all he wanted was closeness. She remembers the way he looked at her with patience rather than frustration, how he tried to communicate even when she shut down, how he stayed when others would have already walked out. She now sees the value behind his efforts, yet she feels trapped between wanting to reach out and fearing the vulnerability of admitting she was wrong. This inner conflict deepens when she sees him responding differently, maybe becoming distant or choosing himself for the first time. A part of her wants to bridge the gap, to say she regrets how things ended, but pride whispers that doing so would make her appear weak. So she hides her remorse in silence. She responds with short messages, delayed replies, or no reply at all, not because she doesn't care, but because caring feels like a confession she is not ready to make. And so the regret grows in her unspoken moments, in the quiet nights when she scrolls through old conversations, reading his words with a tenderness she didn't allow herself before. She may try to rationalize his absence by convincing herself he wasn't truly the man she needed, yet her heart contradicts every excuse her pride creates. The remorse becomes a private narrative she doesn't share with anyone, a story she edits in her mind to avoid confronting the truth. And even as she maintains a facade of strength, her pride becomes a lonely place to hide, because while it protects her from admitting her regret to others, it also prevents her from healing, from expressing what she truly feels, and from acknowledging the depth of the loss that she now realizes too late. The internal conflict between longing and self-protection becomes a constant tug-of-war inside her, a quiet battle she fights long after the relationship has ended. On one side lives the part of her that still misses him, the warmth of his presence, the steadiness of his support, the comfort of knowing she mattered to someone who showed his love through consistency rather than chaos. This longing doesn't fade quickly, it resurfaces in unexpected moments, like when she passes a familiar place they once went together or hears a phrase he used to say. It shows up when she realizes how rare his emotional maturity was, how gentle he became in her moments of doubt, how deeply he cared even when she didn't always meet him halfway. These memories pull at her heart, reminding her of the connection she once shared, a connection she can no longer access with ease. Yet on the other side stands her instinct for self-protection. This part of her fears vulnerability, not because she didn't love him, but because confessing her longing feels like lowering the walls she spent years building. She worries that if she reaches out first, if she opens herself up to him again, she may be rejected or seen as weak. This fear often outweighs her desire to reconnect, so she holds herself back even when her heart nudges her forward. She tells herself there is dignity in staying silent, strength in keeping her distance, and logic in letting time do the work. But the truth is, she's conflicted. She wants closure yet fears the conversation. She wants him to know she still thinks about him but doesn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing how much she feels. The struggle becomes more intense when she sees signs that he is healing, perhaps even moving on. A photo of him smiling, a new focus in his life, or the absence of his old patterns of reaching out, these things stir something unsettling inside her. Part of her is glad he's doing well, while another part aches at the thought that he may no longer need her. The longing grows stronger, but so does her resistance. She may draft messages she never sends, rehearse conversations she will never have, or imagine moments of reconnect ion that end only in silence. And through it all, she maintains an outer composure that masks the storm within. This conflict becomes a cycle, desire pulling her one way, pride and fear pulling her the other. She wants to be honest with herself, yet she also wants to stay protected. She wants to take responsibility, but she also wants to keep her heart safe from further pain. And so she lives in this emotional in-between, longing for what was, guarding herself from what could be, uncertain how to move forward while still tangled in what remains unfinished. Inside her the subtle signs of grief begin to appear not in dramatic outbursts but in the small, almost unnoticeable ways she moves through her days. Grief after losing a good man doesn't always look like tears or emotional collapse. Sometimes it looks like the quiet pause she takes before responding to a message that reminds her of him, or the way she goes still when someone mentions his name. She may behave as if nothing has changed, as if her life continues uninterrupted, but internally she feels the dull ache of an emotional void she isn't ready to acknowledge. She may carry on with routines, responsibilities, and social commitments, yet certain moments catch her off guard: the sudden silence after a joke she once would have shared with him, the empty car ride where she realizes she no longer receives his calls, the evenings that feel heavier than they used to. These subtle shifts begin to accumulate, revealing a sorrow she works hard to hide. She starts to revisit old memories without intending to. Her mind wanders back to the times he made her feel seen, the small gestures she didn't fully appreciate, the comfort of knowing that someone cared for her without conditions. This reflection is not always conscious, it rises naturally, especially in the quiet moments when distractions fade. She may notice herself comparing new interactions to the way he treated her, finding that others don't offer the same emotional presence or thoughtfulness. She may realize that the laughter she shares with others lacks the ease she once felt with him, or that the conversations she has now feel less grounding. These realizations don't overwhelm her all at once, they emerge slowly, like pieces of a pattern she can no longer ignore. Even her behavior changes in ways she can't quite explain. She becomes more selective about who she lets near her, more cautious in her trust, more reflective in her choices. Losing him teaches her the cost of overlooking a good man, even if she never admits this aloud. She may withdraw slightly from social circles, not out of depression, but because certain environments highlight the absence she feels. She may scroll through moments from her past, lingering on snapshots or messages she once ignored. She may check his profile or look for signs of him without meaning to, driven not by obsession but by a longing she struggles to suppress. These subtle signs of grief weave themselves into her daily life, shaping her emotions in ways she tries to conceal. And while she may appear composed to the world, her quiet actions reveal the truth. She is grieving a loss she once believed she could handle, discovering that the goodbye she thought would bring freedom instead leaves her with an ache she never anticipated. The truth beneath her facade is often the hardest part for her to admit, even to herself. On the surface, she may appear indifferent, strong, resilient, or even unbothered. She may speak with confidence about her decisions, convincing those around her and attempting to convince herself that she chose a path aligned with her needs. But beneath this carefully crafted exterior lies a much more complicated truth. It is the recognition that she misjudged the relationship, that she overlooked the quiet consistency he offered, or that she underestimated the depth of his loyalty. This truth is uncomfortable, because acknowledging it requires her to confront the ways she contributed to the loss of a man who genuinely cared. So instead, she creates a version of herself that appears untouched by the consequences. Privately, however, she feels the weight of what she lost. She remembers the way he supported her through uncertainties, how he listened with patience, how he sought solutions instead of placing blame. She recalls the moments when his presence brought stability to chaos, when his understanding softened her fears, when his affection made her feel valued even on the days she doubted herself. And recognizing that she let go of someone who offered that level of emotional safety leaves her with a truth that stings. She didn't lose someone ordinary, she lost someone who was good for her in ways she only fully understands now. This truth often hides behind silence. She doesn't speak about it with friends because doing so would expose her vulnerability. She doesn't tell him because pride prevents her from reopening doors she closed too quickly. Instead, she carries this awareness quietly, feeling it surface during moments she least expects, when she sees a couple communicating gently, when she faces a challenge alone and remembers how he used to steady her, or when she realizes that not everyone will love her with the same sincerity he did. These moments reveal a truth she cannot completely bury, no matter how composed she appears. The facade she maintains becomes both her armor and her cage. It protects her from judgment but also keeps her from healing. It allows her to seem strong but prevents her from acknowledging her longing. And deep within, she knows that the truth she hides is not about wanting him back simply for comfort, it is about recognizing the rare quality of what she once had. She understands now that his presence brought a balance she didn't appreciate, that his love required a level of emotional maturity she wasn't ready to meet, and that losing him wasn't just about losing a person but losing a version of herself that felt safer, more understood, and more deeply connected to something real.